Good evening. It is 6:30, so we're going to get started. My name is Dr. Tracy Vitale. I'm the superintendent here at Seneca Valley. Welcome. I see some familiar faces. We have a few parents. We also have the press, I see. We have some administrators and we have some teachers. So we have a really great group coming together this evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking your beautiful evening. I don't know how long it will remain beautiful, but spending it with us. We expect this evening to be probably no more than an hour, maybe even shorter, we shall see. But what I will do this evening is introduce folks. We have our feasibility study folks here, our demographic folks here. And so I want the public, we also have board members here, administrators, parents to know who these experts are leading us through this evening. And I want to reiterate that no decisions will be made this evening. Many of you did receive our correspondence, and so this is a more in-depth, detailed presentation, and it will be recorded, and we will have that available for parents who could not attend this evening, or community members as well. But we want to be very open, very transparent with our community so that we can talk about where we're headed. No, again, no final decisions will be made this evening. This is more of a presentation, background, and then at the very end of the presentation, we will have administrators up front. We have experts that will be joining us. And if we don't know the answer to your question, we will jot down your name and your phone number, and then someone from the central office administration will get back to you this week, no later than next week. And so let's begin. Studying current population trends and projected growth is a necessary component of planning for all school districts. We believe that good schools need good communities, and good communities need good schools. One of our retirees from Cranberry Township, Jerry Andre, used to say that to us all the time, and it certainly rings true tonight as well. We want to move forward in partnership with our communities and our parents. As we are eagerly planning for the opening of a brand new building next fall, Erman Crest Elementary and Erman Crest Middle School, we knew that part of that process should include an in-depth look at our ever-growing communities and all of our buildings. We're very fortunate at Seneca Valley because most school districts in Pennsylvania have seen a population decrease over the last decade. We have not. That is not the case at Seneca Valley. We are growing, and this is a good problem to have. So far, our growth has been moderate enough that we have been able to handle and manage such a growth. It is with this information in mind that we consulted with experts in the field of demography and feasibility, and were able to develop a proposed adjustment plan that will ease capacity in all of our kindergarten through 6th grade schools during a time of a building transition and incremental population growth. This adjustment plan will impact approximately 186 students in kindergarten through 5th grade who are not already attending Evans City Elementary or Evans City Middle School. In each case, these 186 students will now be attending the new Erman Crest K-6 facility in our planning stages. Again, no final decision has been made, but at this point, we are anticipating about 186 students would be impacted when we look at the development and the housing plans. Moving forward, once approved by our school board sometime in May, such adjustments to the K-6 attendance zones will allow us to create and expand school facility space for future programs and initiatives. Ultimately, our goal is to continue providing the same kind of exemplary education and class sizes that our families have come to expect. We've been very fortunate, again, at Seneca Valley. Our school board has given us the money and the resources to keep our class sizes at a reasonable amount. But it's also a time that we want to reevaluate those class sizes and see if we can make them even smaller. We do anticipate that the plan will come before the board formally in May. An overview of the process so far. The feasibility study that we have conducted at the Seneca Valley School District has been with Eckles Architecture, and Jeremy Beatty is here this evening. If you could stand, Jeremy, just to give a wave so folks know who you are. And in that feasibility study, we're looking at every single building in the district. What do the physical buildings look like? What do they look like behind the walls? How many students can fit in each of those buildings? How many classrooms can fit? And what is the ultimate capacity the building can hold versus the operational capacity? The demographic study has been conducted by Davis Demographics, and with us this evening, they came in from Texas to meet with you in person. Lauren Woods, if you could give a wave, from Davis Demographics, and Georgia Leonard, who will be presenting later this evening. In 2015, the school district did one of our first in many years, a feasibility and demographic study. That is when we determined the need for another new elementary school, and that is the one that will open in the fall, Erman Crest. At that time, the data provided us the knowledge that the northern tiers of the district will continue to see new growth. The current study that began, the board commissioned the demography study in November of 2021. And this study so far has confirmed again that the continued growth of our district and the need for adjustment to the elementary attendance zones at a time when we're opening a building to relieve some of the pressure from all of our elementary buildings that are currently over capacity is what the district needs to be looking at and further studying currently. What is our overall goal? Well, our overall goal is to make everyone happy. And we all know that's impossible, right? But ultimately, our overall goal is to make sure that all of the quality services are delivered to all of our elementary buildings. And my personal goal is to make our elementary class sizes smaller than they currently are. While they are within best practice ranges, they are not where we would like them to be, especially in that K-4 programming where you want class sizes to be small. We all know that critical skills occur in K-4, and children need to learn to read by 3rd grade. And we know that those are milestones that children are currently progressing with here at Seneca Valley. But listening to our teachers and our parents, we would like to reduce those class size numbers even more if we could. Currently, we do know that all students who would have been assigned to the Evans City Elementary or Evans City Middle School will now go to Erman Crest. We knew that would happen. That was very likely, and parents knew that. We've been working on that for 2 to 3 years. All current 4th grade Evans City and CVE students will matriculate to the Erman Crest Middle Program. All Rowan and Hain current 4th grade students will also matriculate to Hain Middle. And all students impacted this evening as we begin talking about different housing developments, any student that's impacted will likely go to Erman Crest. Again, nothing is in stone. Tonight is about watching the presentation in detail, writing down our questions, your questions, and then talking further with the demographers before the final plan comes to our school board. Another goal that we have, as I've mentioned, is reducing class sizes, but also to provide some relief to the current K-4 buildings. It's not just about those regular ed classrooms, it's also about the special classes that we offer. We are one of the few school districts that offer foreign language in our elementary schools. So when we look at our specials and how that is a pipeline to the electives to our middle school and high schools here on campus, that too is very important to us. Seneca Valley has always been about the whole child and not just academics. Academics is a huge piece, but we also have learned through the pandemic that we need to focus on social, emotional learning now more than ever. So all of those things will be taken into consideration as we look at the demography, as we look at the new plans coming in, the current plans that are on the docket. At the very end of the presentation this evening, we will have administrators, we have quite a few here this evening, principals, directors at central office. We will all be up front, and if we don't know the answer to your question, we will write down your name and phone number and get back to you. And it will be at that time, if you have individual questions, that I would encourage you to come and talk to us versus a whole group where your individual question can be better answered individually. This evening, As I told you, Ms. Georgia Leonard will be presenting on behalf of the demography study and the demographer. This evening you will hear her go over a brief review of the forecast and the methodology that her company used. You will hear her talk about the objectives with rezoning. You will see a map of the district, current and new proposed boundaries, similar to the dashboard that you've seen on our website and that we've shared with you, but even more detail. She will also talk about the current and the 5-year percentage capacity under rezoning. This will provide the district the ability to also make future decisions. The rezoning is not just about 1 year, it is about 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. And what I have seen in other districts is where they will move children and then they need to move them again in 1 year. We want to make sure that does not happen. We want to try to avoid that. And so when we make decisions now for the fall, we want to make sure that we're setting up the district and our buildings to be at a reasonable capacity with good class sizes in our elementaries. And so without further ado, I would invite Ms. Georgia Leonard to begin her presentation. And again, we will reserve time for you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at first I want to begin with how we started this project several months ago. We worked very, very closely with the staff and with Sean and Jim getting the district boundaries put together. We work with a lot of data. We work with a lot of spatial data and a lot of tabular data, and we just kind of dive in and see where it's all going to come together. So first, I know that last 2 weeks ago, I met with the board and I went over the forecast and what it was looking like in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm going to do a quick brief overview of that as well as our methodology. And these are the key items that were presented in that. So your K to 4 is expected to increase about 200 students district-wide over the next 5 years. 5 to 6 will also see an increase over the next 5 years, about 13%. And your grades 7 and 8, they are expected to grow about 5%, which is about 60 students, a little bit of growth. And 9 and 10 grades are also expected to grow over the next 5 years. But at the end of the 10 years, you could see about a 13% growth. Grades 11 and 12 are potentially going to see a slight decrease as smaller class size matriculate through and graduate. But overall, your district is expecting to see about a 9% increase. So our methodology. This diagram kind of depicts the different things that we've pulled together. We look at your birth factors because they directly impact your K class. We look at mobility. These are students that are moving in and out of existing homes. You know, your neighborhoods, who's moving in, are these neighborhoods turning over? And they're very cyclical. You have students that graduate, people become empty nesters, they move out of neighborhoods, and then younger families will move back in. So all of this will kind of get tallied into student yields. Student yields are directly correlated with residential development. So what we do is we have our parcel data that we get from the state or from the county, and we overlay our existing student population, and we count how many students actually intersect that particular housing type. And we focus on the different types of development that we have going on in the district. And once we have all of those components brought together, we can then plug them into the forecasts and push a button on the machine and have it chime out, and then we just analyze it from there and do it, make adjustments as needed. We have conversations and make edits as the district. As we analyze things and we see things that might have different nuances in the neighborhood, maybe a different neighborhood that's, for example, Callery. We look at that one and we're like, this might need to be adjusted, and we do, and then we just make those revisions and move forward. So this is the end slide that I showed you guys 2 weeks ago. It's looking, these are the numbers of your current students and your forecasted 5 years out, and then 10 years out, what we're the expectations. So we're starting off with this current year, about 7,359 students. Now keep in mind, these students, this was a student snapshot back in the fall. So these are your fall numbers that gets reported to the state. And then about 700 students approximately at the end of 10 years. All right, so rezoning objectives. The staff that we worked with, there were 2 different workshops that we came together. One of them was more formal. We had a huge group of people, and we sat there and we would work through the process. And it became very clear there were a few things that were very important that we wanted to focus on. The first being is we wanted to set the stage for what's going to happen next year, but also what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years out. As you know, your district is growing, so we need to be able to put the district in a position that will allow y'all to accommodate that growth. The next thing was least impact on families and students. A lot goes into that, right? Because you've got neighborhoods, you've got friends living next to friends, and you have transportation gets involved. So there's a lot of different things that we look at that try to keep as least amount of impact as we can. So in these workshops, and last week or 2 weeks ago I talked about study areas, and I'll briefly mention this again. Study areas are these granular neighborhoods where we've broken down the elementary attendance area, and they're subdivisions. We cut study areas based on roadways, like roadways that might exceed 40 miles an hour. I've cut based on that. I know I wouldn't want my kindergartner walking across that if I could help it. And natural breaks. If there's a river or something, we'll cut study areas on that. And so we just fine tune it and we bring it down, and we end up with these small study areas that, should we have to rezone them or move them from one school to another, it makes sense. Cutting on the backside of parcels and not necessarily down the center of a street. If it's a normal residential street, you don't want the person that lives across the street from you going to a different school. That just doesn't make much sense. So that was something that was really important to the district, to the staff. And then the other thing was making sure that we set it up to the point where we were relieving pressure from other campuses that were already over capacity. So this is the first, so we did have 2 different iterations of rezoning. This is the one that they were more inclined to present, and it had a little bit more student adjustment, but it helped with the balancing out in the future years. So this is your K-4 zones. I know that this is a little bit difficult to see, but if you were to go to the dashboards online, it's a very similar map. These red outlines are your current boundaries, and the shaded area are what is proposed. So one of the very first things that we had done was immediately moved everybody that was at Evans City right over to Urban Crest, right off the bat. And then that way, all we had to do is we had to say, okay, where are we at with percentages now? How is this, if we move this particular study area, how is it going to impact us now? How is it going to impact us 5 years from now? Okay, and then so there was this exchange, this dialogue that would then happen. And this was what happened in the workshop, is we would move this study area and we're like, okay, what does this look like 5 years from now? And then we would move this other study area or this cluster of neighborhoods. And then we would just go back and forth and see what had the least impact and what made the most sense with transportation. So it was a multifaceted project. In this particular scenario, we have, as you can see, all of these students in this column are going to Urban Crest, right through there. So you've got 76 students coming from Connoquenessing Valley. Evans City is, of course, the 554. Haynes is 19, and Rowan is 42. Total is 691 students. Now these are residential students, resident-based students. Everything that we do is resident-based. Not to be, sometimes can be confused with enrollment. So when we rezone, we have to know on where students live. You can account for that. That's something that you can actually physically shuffle, right? With enrollment, it's much more subjective. And then with the 5-6 zones, we, the main area of change is right down here. Okay? And so again, everybody going to Urban Crest. Evans City is 489. Haynes is 91 for a total of 580 students. 5-6, grades 5-6 students. One of the things that was also important, and I believe Dr. Vitale actually mentioned this, was that getting very clear feeder patterns from which elementary schools that were going to the middle schools. This was important to the district, so that was another thing that we wanted to stay focused on. It was definitely a source of like, is it important? Which is a more important balance, this, that. All right, so your forecast, so to take what we have brought in with our rezoning option, this is what it would look like versus in your capacities for future utilization. So this first column is the capacities at which we've been provided by the Eckles group. And then this shows you your current utilization with enrollment in those capacities. For example, Seneca, Connoquenessing Valley is at 112% capacity. And then with the rezone, next school year, we'd be looking at 104%. In 5 years, we're looking at 108%. And Evans City, currently at 101%, has a lower capacity. All of those students are getting moved over to Urban Crest, which gives us some room to bring some of those other students over. So Haynes, currently sitting at 103%. However, next year could be sitting at 99 with this plan. And then 5 years from now, we're sitting at 100%. And then Rowan, same thing, we're looking at 105% currently. And then next school year, we could, with this plan, we'd be at 101%. And then in 5 years, 94%. Erman, in next school year, will be at 81%. And then in 5 years, 103%. Similar situation with your 5-6 rezone. We have a capacity for Evans, 5-6 is 519, currently sitting at 94%. At Haynes, we have a capacity of 553 with a current utilization of 105%. And in 5 years under this rezone, we would be at 92%. And then in next year would be 92%, in 5 years would be 106%. Urban Crest, 618 capacity for 5-6 grade, and then would be looking at 97% capacity in the starting of next year, and then 103% in 5 years. And that is what I have.